Hello, I'm Phoebe Legere and welcome to Roulette TV. Tonight our guest is composer Pauline Oliveros. Ms. Oliveros is one of the most important composers of the 21st century. She's also an amazing accordionist, a brilliant theorist, and an inspired improviser. In 1981, Oliveros left the University of California at San Diego at the rank of full professor to support her creative projects and collaborations. In 1985, Oliveros was honored by a retrospective of her music at the JFK Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. Her recorded works are available on 17 CDs. Roulette TV is honored to present a living treasure, innovator, truth-teller, pioneer, visionary, composer, Pauline Oliveros.
Move it up a little bit. All right, so can you hear me okay? I'm working with the same mic, but in a different location. And a little bit different setup. Last time we were doing this, let's see, the last one I canceled, the internet was weird. And the one prior to this, the live stream prior to this, um, was, let's see, that works. The live stream prior to this, prior to the one that I canceled, the connection was getting weird. That was the Tiny Desk concerts. So I have some good changes that I'm excited about. Not that you need to know, but I'm going to tell you anyways. So there's been some changes to the studio, the third floor studio here, which is pretty cool. You might notice that you have a different view. And I'm going to show you around the studio a little bit, which will be fun in just a second. But first, let me know, how is the audio? Do you hear me okay? Is it loud enough? Does my voice, the loudness of my voice, does it match the volume of the YouTube video? Help me get the levels going on. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Driflasan. All right, there we go. Igar says, whoa, this music is creepy. I love it. Yeah, agree. Hi, Magnus. And I didn't get the chat up on the screen first, but hi, Tom, Accordion, and hi, Bertie Wooster. Okay, thanks, Bertie Wooster. And hey, Valley Drive made it. Right on. Good to see you, Valley Drive. So, yeah, so one great thing is that I'm plugged in now through the Ethernet cable. So there should be no issues with that on my end. And if there are issues, then I think it's due to the platform that I'm using called Restream, because I'm going live again on Facebook and on Twitch. I'm trying both of those platforms. Let's see. All right, what's next? Yeah, I want to, let's see. I want to show you around the studio a little bit and show you the changes, which are pretty cool. But I need to change the camera, which I can do that right here. Okay. Now you're seeing the studio. This is going to get a little meta here. So this is where I normally would, let's see. Well, I do have a little bit of a leash here, but normally you'd be looking over this way. And I didn't used to have all the accordions on the desk, and you'd see that view. But I got a ceiling fan, which is really nice because it's about to get hot here. And this is on third floor, so the heat rises. So because I had to move everything, to when the ceiling fan, people came and put the ceiling fan in, I had to get everything out of the room. So I thought, oh, okay, maybe I'll try a different setup. So this is cool. Normally, this area right here, let's see if I can back up. I got these 3 beautiful windows here that look out into the city or onto the hill. Let's see if that'll focus. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's my view. It's really gorgeous. Lots of hills here in Pennsylvania. Normally, this would be the backdrop for where I would shoot all the teaching videos that I make, and I make a bunch. Every week I make at least like 3 or so. But I decided to put the desk here right in the middle of the room, which makes the whole room really comfortable. I have a lot more floor space now. These used to all be like microphone stands and lights and stuff, because my idea was to keep the video studio set up all the time. And so now I've changed that. So I put myself in the middle room. I gave myself the best spot. And let's see, change this back to there. All right, there we go. So I gave myself the best spot in the room. I get a great breeze from the fan, super comfortable. And I'm going to work on getting this behind me to look a little bit nicer and cooler, similar to how I had the previous setup. But I think it's so far so good. Yeah, thanks, Dread Pirate. Yeah, it feels a lot better in here because I created a lot more open space, so it just feels good. I used to be kind of cramped over there behind my desk, and this feels way better, and I think it's going to be good. I also, for the microphone stands, the idea to keep my life simple is just to have the kind of video studio space set up all the time. because like I said, I make tons of those teaching videos, and a lot of them wind up on SoundSlice for my video courses and stuff. And it's such a pain to set up the mics, get the levels, the positioning, all that stuff, tear them down, put them away, wrap the cables, all that sort of stuff. But when you have the mics out and the lights as well, like I have these big cheap diffusers. I don't know what you call them, but they're like, I got them from Amazon. They're horrible, but they were really cheap. Anyways, all that stuff takes up tons of room. So I had this other great idea for years, for like, I feel like 15 years. I've had the same boom arm. I'm really proud that I had this thing this long, that I didn't. I have a lot of like, oh, I need the expensive gear thing. I don't know. Most people have that, I guess. But I fall to that parade maybe too often, especially because I'm broke. But this thing I've had for like 12 years. I can't, and it's so cheap, and like, and I'm very proud of myself. And just, it's wild. It's like my Mercury is so in retrograde. The last week or so, I've been like, man, I really would like a new one. And it started to really bend down at the bottom. It was really starting to have problems because this isn't the best metal, and it was kind of falling sideways. And I was starting to think about, oh, I should get a new one. And then what happened yesterday? It broke. It just broke right down here. This joint where it connects, it just broke. And I said, well, okay, now's the time. So then I thought, okay, cool. If I have this over here on my left side, this is the normal way that I have the microphone on this arm. Very convenient for teaching lessons and all that sort of stuff, doing the live streams. But I thought, oh, that would be cool because I'm going to shoot the videos. You can even see the camera back there. Maybe you can't, but directly behind me in the closet is on the tripod is my camera that I use to shoot the video. And so rather than having a mic stand set up over here and a mic stand set up over here, what if I just had I use the same boom arm, just switch out the microphone, because I have better microphones that I use for the videos that I wouldn't want to use daily because they get messed up from humidity and all that moisture from speaking and that sort of stuff. You don't want to leave your good microphones out all the time, which I try not to. Anyways, this one can swing around. I would flip around this way to be shooting the video from the camera like this. And then I can just swing the boom arm over and adjust it that way. And then if I got a second boom arm, I could swing that over for the left hand. And then I don't have tripod microphone stands all over the floor. Everything's clean. When I'm done, I can just take the microphones off, put them back in the case, put it in the closet, and I'm good to go. So those are supposed to come tomorrow, which I'm pretty excited about. So I'm so far, today's the first day really with the new studio. But that also means that I don't have a boom arm for today. So I'm using this kind of, let's see, is this going to pull? I'm so terrified to turn the camera. You know what? I'll move the microphone over to the camera. So I have this like microphone boom sort of thing going on. But all in all, it's really fun. It feels really good. It just, when you get your space set up better, it just feels good. It feels good to be in there. So that's kind of the update. And I haven't been I've been getting a little burned out, a little bit too much work in front of the computer and not enough balance of like other types of music, performing and that sort of stuff. So I just need to create a little balance. I love the live streaming, but between all the teaching and then making all the videos and then all live streaming, I was just starting to get like a little, you lose your sharpened edge a little bit. So, but this is good. And then the technical issues on top of it all really are frustrating too. But I'm feeling like with the plugged-in Ethernet, I think the gear and the camera is all set up and all that sort of stuff is good. So that concludes this segment of the studio updates sort of stuff. Dread Pirate, I see the chat on your screen as well as in the Twitch window, unless you're sharing it for other formats. Yeah, Dread Pirate, I am because I'm also live on Facebook, and I don't know, this platform that I'm using, Dread Pirate, has the ability to like merge chats from multiple sources. So I can see, and I can put on the screen a mixed chat from everybody that's watching on Twitch and then everybody that's watching on Facebook as well, which is pretty cool. And I'm not sure if there's anybody from Facebook yet, because I didn't do my normal Facebook blast. It looks like everybody that's here is watching from Twitch. But anyway, that's the deal. I wonder if people will or will not like it, but that's what it is right now. And when I respond, I can read the chat from Facebook and Twitch, but when I put something in my type message box here, it only gets put back into the chat for Twitch. It doesn't get put back into the Facebook chat. And I'm still trying to figure out how to go live on Instagram. I actually was trying that this morning, and I have like 2 Instagram accounts under the same account, or, like my teaching account and my performing account are both connected, and I would like to go through the teaching account. Anyways, boring stuff. All right, so let's get to the topic for today. So this is a topic that I've wanted to do for a couple streams, and it's here today. I think it's also very cool because it ties in with what's coming next week, which is very cool. So next week's stream, we'll have a guest, which I'm really excited about. It's going to be Guy Klusevsek, and he has been an inspiration and a hero of mine for pretty much my whole life on the accordion. I found him pretty early. I don't know if you all are familiar with Guy, but he's really phenomenal musician, and composer, American composer and musician. He's been very prolific in his life, composing tons of new music. I think a large part of his formative career, but I'm going to ask him about this and do some more research, because I know him as a listener. I don't know him as somebody that's really studied his life. But that's kind of the point of these streams, is just to learn, to explore and learn and stuff. And so anyway, Guy has worked a lot, I think, in his formative period, not formative, but like a earlier career in the 70s and 80s. He composed for a lot of dance, modern dance in New York and around the country and around the world, new music for that stuff. And he definitely is, in my estimation, one of the very few, let's say, art accordionists or artist accordionists. Accordions making maybe more art music. That's not the best way to go about it, but rather than say a folk musician or whatever. Anyways, my point is, like, we have what I call the accordion Middle Ages, which I'm sure you all have recognized. And we're going to get Marian Jacobson on the stream sometime soon, and she's going to talk more about it. But the accordion Middle Ages, where the accordion was like the most popular thing, in like the 40s and 50s, incredibly popular up until like the mid 60s. And then rock and roll became popular, and the accordion became like the least popular thing. And that became like, the accordion Middle Ages, let's say, where things sort of dropped out. I don't know. Help me out if there's a better way to phrase that, chat. But anyway, and it didn't, it developed a stigma as well. Like, we all know the Gary Larson cartoon, "Welcome to Heaven, here's your harp. Welcome to Hell, here's your accordion." Steve Urkel, the contemporary stereotype of dark ages. But I think the more contemporary way to phrase that these days is to call it Middle Ages. I think people use the term Middle Ages instead of Dark Ages, but that is the implication, Tom Accordion. Yes. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is Guy's career, his life in accordion continued, and he made a career. He interacted. He played at the highest levels through that that period. One of the few, when many accordion players stopped and there just wasn't concertizing and creation and all that sort of stuff, or nearly as much, and especially in the genre of, say, new music and stuff like that, new compositions. But no problem at all, Tom. I'm not trying to be a contrarian or anything, or a know-it-all. And Guy is not only significant, in my opinion, because I really enjoy his music and his artistry and stuff, and he's prolific and he's his own thing, but I think that other reason as well. One of the tie-ins here, which was honestly unintentional until I just sat down and thought about what I wanted to do, was like, oh, I thought about really the concept for today's stream started with me wanting to explore more about resonance, the idea of resonance, because Jacques and Natalie, they talk about, it's not as much explicitly stated, but a lot of what they talk about is in terms of getting a great sound on the accordion is you need to find the resonance points on the notes that you're playing. You need to listen to the air. You need to stay connected to it, feel the air of the instrument, and then like especially things like the bass notes, like when you're playing pa bass, there's a way to play that and a way to hold on to the bass reed and open that door all the way so that we feel the full resonance, the boom. It feels like a nice big sound that feels warm and moves us along like a bass does. And there's a lot about accordion. I mean, all instruments, you know. But I think maybe even more the accordion than an instrument like a piano, say, for example. And so I wanted to explore that more. And then my explorations in terms of continuing to play with syllables for articulations have led me to the work of Kristen Linklater. I haven't worked with her directly. I've worked with somebody who's part of that sort of philosophy and learning pathway. And the Linklater ideas are very cool. And the vowel ideas, which makes sense, are all about resonance too. I was like, okay, this is great. And then immediately I thought about Pauline Oliveros, who's a musician I know I just have the smallest pardon me, experience really checking out, and but she's somebody I know of certainly, and a little bit about it. Her work I do know about seems to have a lot to do with resonance and listening to the accordion, the sound of the accordion, and music in general. So that is sort of the summation of all this stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to check out, I have found a great video on the physics of music, which just came out a few months ago. It's really great. Not the physics of music, the physics of the accordion specifically, which is, from my experience, it's been so challenging to find any information on. It's very, very challenging. You can find tons of videos on the physics of many, many other instruments and like very basic physics. Like not necessarily basic, but broad fundamental laws of resonance, say, and how that relates to music in general. But to understand maybe deeper things about the accordion, there's not really very much. But I did find a video for us to check out today, and should be pretty cool. All right, that being said, let's start with some music. Let's start with checking out who is Pauline Oliveros. We're going to start with this. We're going to zip around because that's what I think creates the most energy, positive energy here. All right, so we're going to check out Pauline Oliveros, her TED Talk in Indianapolis, and Pauline, here we go. All right. I put this one here. There we go. And I have a new chat overlay. Oh, that's why. Okay, I was thinking like, why? Because I used to be able to go in the corner with the, I used to be able to pick a format where I could go in the corner like this. Let's see, where is that? Yeah, like that. That's why I couldn't be before, because I have the chat and because I have the overlay thing. I kind of like the overlays though. They're nice for when people come in. So like I made this one here. Yeah, so now if that's kind of weird that when that comes in, I go away. Sorry, I'm still, every time I do this, it seems like there's new stuff to get together. What do we like? That one or that one? That's better. Okay, here we go. Here's Pauline Oliveros.
Why would 3 musicians squeeze through a manhole-sized opening with their instruments to climb down a 14-foot ladder into a dark underground cistern? For us, echo and reverberation can be fascinating. Consider what fun it is to sing in the shower. Perhaps it brings out our inner Narcissus. The balloon pop you heard represents the remarkable 45-second reverberation time in the Dan Harpole Cistern in Port Townsend, Washington State, where the 3 of us played the music that is sounding now. The meme, deep listening, occurred to me after our recording in the cistern. We had come there to experience the unusual sound. Recording was really an afterthought that resulted in the release of Deep Listening by New Albion Records in 1989. And that was the birth of Deep Listening Band with Stuart Dempster, Paniotis, and myself. In order to play in the cistern environment, we had to learn to listen in a new way. We had no plan, no written score, and had no discussion beforehand. We simply improvised, played, and learned that the cistern was playing with us. We had to respect the sound that was coming back to us from the cistern walls and include it in our musical sensibility. All this was unspoken and simply experienced by the 3 of us. We chose Deep Listening as a title for the CD and band. We were all incurable punsters, and we created the music so deep underground. The practice of deep listening, as it has developed, explores the difference between hearing and listening. The ear hears, the brain listens, the body senses vibrations. Listening is a lifetime practice that depends on accumulated experiences with sound. Listening can be focused to detail or open to the entire field of sound. Listening is a mysterious process that is not the same for everyone. Humans have developed consensual agreements on the interpretation of sound waves delivered to the brain by the ears. Languages are such agreements. To hear and to listen have a symbiotic relationship with a questionable common usage. We know more about hearing than listening. Scientists can measure what happens in the ear. Measuring listening is another matter, as it involves subjectivity. We confuse hearing with listening. For example, music schools program ear training classes, but the ear can't be trained. What really happens is a cultivation of musical mind. I differentiate to hear and to listen. To hear is the physical means that enables perception. To listen is to give attention to what is perceived, both acoustically and psychologically. Hearing turns a certain range of vibrations into perceptible sounds. When listening, there is a constant interplay with the perception of the moment compared with remembered experience. Listening, or the interpretation of sound waves, then, is subject to time delays. Sometimes what is heard is interpreted anywhere from milliseconds to many years later or never. So what did we learn from the cistern? Learning to listen to the cistern space led to listening more closely to all performance spaces and beyond. Each space is different and couples with instruments and voices to sound differently. Performance space is as important as voices and instruments. Formation of Deep Listening Band led to deep listening retreats, workshops, lectures, concerts the world over, and now to the new Center for Deep Listening at Rensselaer that hosts scholars and conferences on deep listening. Deep listening came from 14 feet underground to higher education. So what is deep listening? Acoustic space is where time and space merge as they are articulated by sound. Deep has to do with complexity, boundaries, or edges beyond ordinary or habitual understandings. The subject is too deep for me, or she is a deep thinker. A subject that is too deep surpasses one's present understanding or has too many unknown parts to grasp easily.
Okay. So it's oh, I gotta get the microphone in front of my face. It's fun to be in this space too. I feel like there's different modes. Like we're gonna go to a more mathematical physics sort of exploration in just a moment of the accordion, and this is I don't know, what would you call this? Not philosophy, but it's tingles the brain. It makes you think, and that more conceptual approach, I would say, all it's as long as there's been art, there's been opinions about it, but it's fun to feel that as well. So let's bounce over to something else. I want to sort of layer these like a parfait or whatever. So let's check out these link-later vowels, which are very cool. Do you see that? Yeah. Okay, here we go. Now this one, oh, I also, hi, Christine. And Ravina asked if this was going to be available to, if you could find the Pauline Oliveros TED Talk on YouTube, and yes, you can. And Ravina, I just messaged it to you on Facebook, so you should have it. Here are the vowel sounds. I don't think there's a way for me to full screen this, so this is as big as this is going to be.
I'm Kristen Linklater. This is the Linklater vowel tree as I developed it in the 1970s.
That's very soft, isn't it?
In order to help bring the experience of language out of the head and into the body.
Nah, this one isn't going to work for us. Here, I want to see it from the, the voice of Kristen Linklater, because she's the one that came up with it, but this is a fun one.
Hi guys, we're going to do a voice warm-up exercise here, which we call the vowel tree. It's something I've learnt from a voice coach from the Globe Theatre, and it's very good for warming up each part of your register, and also, particularly if you're doing some Shakespeare, in helping you to enunciate and figure out how to say particular words and what part of your body those words originate from. So we're going to start at the bottom register, and we're going to work our way up step by step. Okay? Is everyone ready?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah? Great. Okay, so the first one is zoo. Zoo.
So this takes the International Phonetic Alphabet, which maybe we should start there with the International Phonetic Alphabet. We'll go to vowels. Okay. Nope, not a good one. Here we go. Not just saying this there.
Ooh. Ooh.
Okay, so you might be watching this and you might go, what what the heck? You were just doing tiny desk concert stuff or Tejano accordion. How does this relate to accordion? So these vowel sounds have different timbres. So if we say eh or oo or ah, if we say eh, you can do that if you want. I suggest if you can, you do. Switch to while you're holding. The sounds sound different. The sounds are different, but the pitch didn't change. I didn't. That's the same pitch. That's the same note, right? If I'm singing a note, but they sound different. What accounts for them sounding different? And that is the amount of overtones that are present that we're perceiving, and also how the sounds are resonating in my body, in my head, in my throat, my chest, and same for you. And if you just think, well, how does this relate to the accordion? Well, you can see it's related. You know, you have a sound, and then we can change the resonance. Like the resonance maybe is going to change from instrument to instrument, of course. But also, if we get into things like the Mornay school of pressing on different parts of depressing the button or piano key to different places, which opens the door to different levels, different degrees. Like when you press the piano key down all the way, the door is all the way open. That might be like an ah. And if you press the piano key down only a tiny bit, maybe you're saying e, I, e, ah. You notice these a lot when you do it in the bass, in your left hand on the bass. It can be very, very helpful to develop this for balance, for control, for air control, and then for aesthetic artistry as well. So there are these system of international phonetic alphabet, and this is the vowels. And what the Linklater system does is it not only looks at making them properly, of course, but then thinking about the sound and how it relates to the entire body. And as I understand, Linklater's approach was formulated to help actors, and actors act with their entire bodies, you know, the characters, their entire bodies. And so when we dip back over to the other video, the exercise that we're seeing being demonstrated, but it comes directly from Kristen Linklater, is to not only think about the resonance and the proper sound, where the tongue is, where is it vibrating in the nose or the bottom of the jaw, that sort of stuff, but to think about it in other places in the body. And the lowest sounds are the lowest parts of your body. So let's listen to a few more of these vowels, and we'll go back over to the other video.
Ah, 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 ah.
Those two sounded the same to me.
Ah.
It's cool that they have the I guess a loudness. Is that really loudness?
Ah.
Yeah, I suppose it is.
Ah.
The thing about loudness is that it's loudness is phenomenal. It's perceptual, so it doesn't decibel level doesn't always equate to loudness. There's many other things that make us perceive something as loud. But it's nice to see the frequency form as well. Okay, all right, so now let's go back over to the other one. Where was it? Vowel tree, here we go. Okay.
Whoa. Whoa. Sha.
Sha.
Ga.
Ga.
Ma.
Ma.
Fa.
Fa.
Ha.
Ha.
Bada.
Bada.
Pay.
Pay.
Dee.
Dee.
Everyone got that?
Yeah.
Great, so we're going to do it again, but we're going to do it all one after each other, yeah? Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Great. Zoo. Shaga. Ma. Fa. Ha. Bada. Pay.
Oh.
And one more time. If you can, try and do it all on one breath. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Zoo. Shaga. Ma. Fa. Ha. Bada. Pay. And that's the vowel tree.
And that's the vowel tree. So that different resonances you can really feel and connect to different parts of your body. And also from my very limited practicing French, there's a lot of the vowel sounds that are up in the nose and multiple nose sounds, resonances that we're not used to in English. Very interesting. And again, the tie-in is to connect our ears to listen differently to the sounds of our accordion, and then to maybe begin to connect different sounds to get control over different sounds, and to be able to observe sounds that we like, you know, oh, I like this musician or whatever, that accordion, or when I played that way, I liked it. And to be able to figure out what is going on, you know, what is this music? What is the sound of this musician? That way, maybe I can take some of it and make some of my music sound like that. Or what is the sound of my own voice? What are the sounds that I hear in my head? What are the sounds of other musicians like? And how can my sounds complement them? So I think in my experience, the accordion has a tendency, if it airs on one side or the other, too harsh or too weak, maybe too strong or too weak, it tends to be too strong. Why? Well, if we think of the accordion purely, you know, how it on face value, right? Well, it's I press the key and I move the bellows, and I press the key and I move the bellows, press, you know. And I think the finesse of that, so that'd be the same as like you know, saying everything as ahs. Ah ha ha ha. You have one palette of sound, as opposed to where you have different resonances even as you go up in pitch, right? This is sort of what we're connecting these ideas to, but also just keying into listening to different resonances. If we just kind of do a drone, almost like a yoga om or something, we say or e. And if you do it, everybody in the chat watching, you find different resonances, you know, that you feel. And then if we put on the accordion, we feel again different resonances. And the inanimate object, the accordion machine, we don't have as much biofeedback. It's not part of our organism, you know, so it takes listening to that. It takes tuning in to listen. So much of making art is just knowing what to listen for, you know. That's a huge skill that we develop and learn, I think, by hanging out, by learning from people, whether it's in the setting of a class or a teacher, or with musicians who do a thing better than you do, no matter what that is, you know. Skill sets. Often we think of like this person is a really great musician, and this person is a better musician than me, and this person is not I'm a better musician than this person, right? But that's not the best, you know. It's I think we cannot help but put things in categories, you know. I think that's one thing that is an innate instinct for humans, is to label things and then to find connections between things that we've labeled. That seems to be something that I've identified that I think is true. But so we can't help but do it. But maybe what's better is to think of, you know, different. This musician has these qualities, you know, that I admire, but it's not everything, you know. Bertie Wooster says it makes him think of Mongolian throat singing with the deep resonance. Yeah. Let's go back to Pauline Oliveros, and then we'll dip over to physics of music stuff. So let's see. Let's check out a different lecture from Pauline, or maybe we should finish that first one. Let's finish the first one. We have about 5 minutes left. Okay.
A deep thinker defies stereotypical knowing, and it may take either a long time or never to understand her. Deep, coupled with listening, or deep listening for me, is learning to expand perception of sounds to include the whole space-time continuum of sound, encountering the vastness and complexities as much as possible.
So for Pauline, the art of music is not just the art of pitches and tones and harmonies and melodies. She's working with sounds, and I think she's trying to maybe put, you know, musical sounds into the same category as other sounds.
Simultaneously, one ought to be able to target a sound or sequence of sounds, perceiving the beginning, middle, and end of them as a focus. Such focus and expansion means that one is connected to the whole of the environment and beyond. My practice is to listen to everything all the time and remind myself when I am not listening.
How about that? My practice is to listen to everything all the time and remind myself when I'm not listening. That is some badass shit right there. That's mindfulness, right? That's mindfulness for a musician. I remember reading an interview with what's his name? It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of it. Tenor saxophone player. What is that dude's name? It's literally on the tip of the tongue. Anyway, amazing jazz musician, like of the young lions of like the 90s, 2000s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. Anyways, and he was talking about, it was a little grandiose what he said, hearing the overtones in a car crash. And then I remember, I don't know if it was him or in a different one, but somebody talking about practicing eavesdropping on multiple conversations at the same time. And seeing if, you know, being in a restaurant and just, I don't know, it's like that game of hearing this conversation at the same time as you're hearing this conversation, at the same time as you're hearing this conversation. It wasn't Dread Pirate. It wasn't Joshua Redman. I remember other things about this guy. He was a model. He did a little bit of modeling. I just saw him like last June at Birdland. He was a guest with the Django All-Stars. It'll come to me. His name will come to me. Anyways, this idea of hearing more, hearing more that's there. I think that's very fascinating. It like tingles in my brain, and it feels a little challenging, but also liberating.
I invite you to take a moment now to notice what you are hearing and to expand your listening to continually include more.
Carter. Thank you, James Carter.
The level of awareness of soundscape brought about by deep listening can lead to the possibility of shaping the chaotic sounds of technology and of urban environments and machinery. Deep listening designers, engineers, and city planners could enhance the quality of life along with artists, sound artists, composers, musicians, and all people who care about sound. We loved playing in the Dan Harpole cistern, but we couldn't really invite an audience to join us there. For 25 years, we wished for a way to bring the cistern acoustics to concert venues. On my 80th birthday, this wish was granted. My RPI colleague, acoustician Jonas Brash, had measured the acoustical properties of the cistern, and with his students created a portable software simulation of the space. My birthday concert in May of 2012 was performed in the Experimental Media and Performing Arts Center Concert Hall at RPI. With 600 audience members immersed in the reverberations of the simulated cistern, the celebration was joyous, and the audience had a brand new experience that made us all very happy. You're now listening to Lapis Lazuli from Sonic Gems, recorded by Deep Listening Band.
I'm gonna not play that because I don't want to get a copyright strike. But we will listen to some of Pauline live. Let's go back and listen to some more Pauline live, just a little bit more, and then we'll dip into something else. Let's see, this is the one that we were. Okay. Alrighty. We'll come back to you, Pauline. Now I want to spin over to this presentation from Accordion Artisans. I'm going to scrub a little bit to get us to the good parts, but This is about the theory and physics of accordion tuning, but in order to get there, the presenter has to talk about the physics of the accordion.
Welcome to this webinar dedicated to accordion craft. My name is Florian Andre, and I will be your host today. The webinar.
I don't know of any other YouTube videos that go into any detail, like this level of detail on accordion tuning. And this channel, there are a few videos on it, and they all go into great detail. Let's see, these accordion tuning methodology overview, theory and physics, that's the one that we're watching, and then how reeds work. You know, maybe we should be watching this one. I didn't even see that one. That's for another day. Cool. This is all stuff that I think is really fascinating and hard to find.
Webinar is organized by Accordion Artisans, a non-profit community of craftmasters. And here is our agenda.
Okay, superb. So we are going to talk today a lot of accordion and tuning theory, also some basic physics of wave motion and so on. And these most of these ingredients, what I'm going to give you, is going to be also applied to more or less every instrument. So I think we can go directly to the first slide and start with basics, the sound. So the sound is basis of our everyday living. And in physics, the sound can be explained with wave motion. In the picture, you can see 6 different kind of types of wave motion interacting with something. So let's say we have transmission. So if we have medium, similar kind of medium, it can pass forward, or it can reflect, especially if we have hard surface with a high density. So then from air, let's say to rock or to glass, there will be reflection. Refraction would be just basically just bending the wave, and I think the best way of describing this, if you are looking to the water and you can see a fish, but it's not exactly there where you can see it. It's a slightly different place. Diffraction, the picture is a bit small, but there's the red line and small gap. And when the wave comes towards the red line, there's a small gap, and after the gap, it spreads. Of course, in acoustics in general, absorption is a very big thing, especially if you talk about having a theater or some kind of display room. There's always thought about the acoustics and scattering, the last one. In accordion itself, the most biggest things what comes to the wave is the reflection and diffraction, what I think. Of course, absorption happens to, let's say, felts in the melody and bass side, but not that much actually. So when we have sound, we have always some kind of movement. It can be a drum, a membrane, or it can be in accordion, we have the reed, what is moving. We can clap our hands. There's always some kind of movement. And when we are clapping hand or have some kind of noise, so we are making movement to the medium. The atoms, the particles in the air, they are starting to have wave motion. And this wave motion goes in the space until it hits something, can reflect or can absorb, and so on, as described earlier. If we are having amplifying system, some kind of PA system, so then we have to have microphone, and we can change the wave in the air to electrical impulses to computer whatsoever we want to do, and then back to speakers and back to air. And in the end, we are going to have the hearing and the understanding of the sound. And depending on what kind of sound it is, something happens very close to the ear, like in the start of the ear, and some understanding of the sound happens in the brain. So it's not totally clear always what happens when, but I will explain at least the some parts what is important to the tuning. When we have sounds, waves, we can understand a sound with a pitch. So there is some kind of level we can hear it. It can be low, it can be high. Or we can have noises what we cannot determine exact. Is it going to be a high pitch or low pitch? Let's say if you hit a drum, so we can understand it's a low note, but we cannot determine exact. Is it a certain pitch? When we go in the sound to the wave, only a pure tone we can produce is a sine wave, or pure tone, you can say that both way. And in normal living, we are not hearing this one. It's always computer made. Let's say some church bells could go very close by to this sine wave motion and sine wave, but in practical everyday living is always more complex than that. Good to know in sound is that it's always working in impulses. So if we have one spot, we start to have a sound, let's say a speaker. So the new sound can never reverse the sound which already exited from the speaker. Although it is possible to muffle the sound in the other end, let's say we have two speakers in certain distances and a person in certain distance, and they have same sounds, but the distance is different. So in theory, they will invert their amplitudes. So the equation for wave is shown there. So the velocity equals to wavelength times frequency. And I have calculated there just for example the wavelengths, what can be what we are listening normally, and these are having some additional aspects as well. If you are in thin atmosphere compared to have next to sea level, it's different a bit, but approximately. So the 440 hertz is having wavelength of 75 centimeter, and if you go to C5 in Helmholtz markings, so almost 4000 hertz, so that then the wavelength is almost 9 centimeters. And in the pictures you can see two types of wave motion. There is the transversal wave and longitudinal wave on the bottom. And here you can see how that is 1 hertz, and therefore 440 hertz is. I have put there is a bit in the ear. Next slide, please. It hurts as an, and they are almost bad. But when we go higher and higher in the frequencies, the dissonance comes.
I just skipped ahead a little bit. I think everybody's probably getting bored.
Worse. Until we go further, the interval comes bigger and bigger, and then we start to hear 2 notes. And I think what's on the next slide, we are able to have some examples. And first, we are going to hear a sample of just a single note, 440 hertz, and it applies second similar notes, and you can hear that the note amplifies. And these notes are made with a pure tone sine wave, so it's a bit pale sound, but you get the point. So no tremolo there at all. And there was small tremolo. And now we can listen to example 4, 5, and 6 directly. So there comes always 1 hertz difference more, so the tremolo increases. And these tremolos happens in the tone fundamental, the lowest frequency. That's the difference what we are hearing as tremolo. And now we can go further and have much bigger hertz level. So we have much bigger dissonance, and we have, let's put the number, example 7 and 8 in one go. So what did you hear was the dissonance, and when we go further apart, it starts to be clear, more clear sound, almost a good interval. And in the very end, the 9th sample, sounds like a dead end in the phone, but that's an pure interval there. So that's the how the frequencies interact together and make.
All right. I want to go and check out that other video that's on this channel about how reeds work. That might be more what I was looking into.
Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you all for joining this first series of.
All right, what's the agenda?
Our agenda today will start by introducing our speakers, and then we'll delve directly into the topics. Each speaker will have around. Let's move on. And I will pass it to Professor Kattingham to speak about his topic. And as a best practice, the slides will be controlled on my end, so I will wait for your request, Professor, to change the slides.
All right. And this is the first slide here. First, I'm glad to be here talking to this group. And this is simply the title page slide. And on the left hand, there's a figure from the Physics Today article. I think for this group, I don't need to show you what an accordion reed looks like, so I won't say too much about that. The middle curve there will come up later as a result of some experiments. And some of us already saw a preview of the right-hand picture, which will be an animation of a simulation that we have tried. So we can go to the next slide. And this is an outline of what I'm going to talk about. It's in order that I'm going to present, but also in kind of a logical order, I think. And that is, it's about, of course, how reeds work and what can we learn and what would we like to know. And there are a few different categories that perhaps overlap a little bit, but the first one will be general topics of scientific interest. And that is, although I began studying free reed instruments, actually I began my study with study of the reed organ, which the reed organ, the harmonium, harmonica, and of course the accordion and all the related instruments operate on the same principle. And I would say in my research, perhaps the main emphasis has been on what you might call the general scientific questions, rather than what you might think of as things that could be immediately applied to practical use. And I've listed two categories under that. And one is sound production by the vibrating free reed. That is, how is the sound actually made? And the other one is related, but not actually the same. And that is the physics of how the free reed actually maintains its self-sustained oscillation. It's sort of intuitive that if you apply a pressure difference across the reed is going to be pushed in one direction. And it's kind of intuitive that the reed is springy, so it will come back. But there's a whole balance of things that need to be taken into account to make that a sustained and steady oscillation, including fluid dynamics and pressure and interaction of the flowing air through the reed. And this is the first part. It says the basic explanation is simple, which I'll show in a minute. The detailed explanation, in particular how you get self-sustained oscillation, is more complicated. And the second part of the talk, we'll talk about some topics of possible practical interest. One is reed chamber resonance, which I think almost anyone who deals with accordions know that is important in many ways. And a kind of related topic to that is pitch bending accordion. And then something else of practical interest, which is important if you're going to make a reed, or just how is it affected by the variation of parameters? There are many ways to make a reed that will sound at a given pitch, but how long do you want to make it? How thick? How big should the gaps be between the reed and the reed plate? How thick should the reed plate be, and so on. And then in the final part, I'll talk a little bit about what we've been working on recently, which are computational simulations. And these have potential for results in both of the previous categories. That is, in particular, it might help us if the equations that involve the physics of self-sustained oscillation from above there are quite complicated, and they really require a computer simulation. There's no simple way with pencil and paper to solve them. So that's something we're working on right now. But if we have successful simulations, those would also be useful in doing what engineers call virtual prototyping. That is, you could make reeds that were all identical except for one aspect, perhaps let's say the thickness of the reed plate or something like that, and compare their performance. So
Okay, let's take a break from that. So I thought this guy's name sounded familiar, and sure enough, I have an article from Physics Today that I found online. When was this? Can I share? I should be able to share a different, let's see, stop sharing. I should be able to share. I just have to figure out how. Here, share screen. I see. This one. Yeah, this article, which I had found. And it's by the same guy that we just saw speaking, which is pretty fascinating. I've read through this. Talks about just the idea that the way accordion reeds work are unique in the sense that a clarinet reed vibrates sort of on one plane or on one side of the mouthpiece. But an accordion reed and a harmonica reed, both, they pass through this channel. And so you're getting sound on both sides. And that makes the physics of them similar, but also very unique. And according to this article and what James is saying here, or Professor Cottingham? Anyway, it's some big brain science stuff. Okay, now how do I stop sharing this? I'm not sure. Let's see. If I close it, yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. Here, so let's. Bertie Wooster was saying. Let's put the chat back up here. Are you guys are you still watching? Here, Bertie Wooster was mentioning throat singing, and we've seen these musicians before, but let's watch them again. Here we go. Now, these are some guys that came through Philly. They have a duo project, but there's also just, I think, a culture of tube and throat singing, like in Nepal and stuff like that. Let's check out these guys. They're very fun. This is on the Liberty Bellows. Fun. Okay. Now we'll check out, let's see. I'm not sure the name of this YouTuber, but they are going to explain some more about Pauline Oliveros' deep listening. And I remember when I was younger, living in Philly, and she actually came and did a workshop, and I didn't go, and I feel like such an idiot. Philly has a big like avant-garde, like improvisational music scene in Philadelphia, and there's a lot of very active musicians there, and some good people organizing lots of concerts.
Famous and influential composers have one or a couple pieces that pretty much everyone thinks of when they hear their name. Wendy Carlos, Switched on Bach. J. Dilla, Donuts. Beethoven, Dun 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 Dun. Dun 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 Dun. But Pauline Oliveros was different. She's not like other girls. Her thing, the thing that pretty much everyone remembers her for, was probably just listening. If you're watching at home going, well, I'm sitting here listening to you drivel on right now, and it doesn't feel that special, I would say fair enough. But not all forms of listening are the same. The truth is, there's an incredibly detailed, varied, and unique world of sounds going on around us all the time. And tuning into this world can offer some pretty deep and meaningful experiences. Oliveros obviously recognized this. But she took it even a step further, to a lifelong practice and philosophy that she called deep listening.
Deep listening is listening in every possible way to everything possible. This means one hears all sounds, no matter what one is doing. Such intense listening includes hearing the sounds of daily life, of nature, and of one's own thoughts, as well as musical sounds. Deep listening is my life practice.
Rather than wanting to flex her composition skills or make an influential piece of music, Oliveros' goal was just to get as many people as possible to listen. Her approach prioritized inclusivity and the subjective experience of individuals rather than her own singular genius as a composer. In addition to deep listening, a ton of different stuff. And honestly, it's been really hard to pick and choose what to include in this video. She was one of the first tape composers, one of the first electronic music composers. She designed and realized her own electronic instrument. She was one of the original members of the San Francisco Tape Music Center. She taught at 5 different universities, published or co-authored 11 different books, and a ton of academic articles. She had her own foundation, and she did a lot of feminist activism, and actually had pretty decent politics. Pauline Oliveros was born in 1932 in Houston, Texas. Her mom gave her an accordion when she was 9 that she would end up using for her entire career. She also realized that she was a lesbian at a very young age and gave herself the nickname Buster. She GTFO'd Houston pretty quickly and moved to San Francisco when she was 20. She frequented a gay bar there called the Black Cat, where there was a marvelous pianist. She got her first tape recorder when she was 21 and started by just recording the sounds that were going on outside of her window. When she played back the tape, she realized that she was missing a lot of the sounds that were happening regularly out there. And this realization was all too existential. So she vowed to try to start to hear every sound that she possibly could. Towards the end of the 50s, she started improvising and making her own compositions with her tape machine. And in 1959, she completed her first piece called Time Perspectives. She said that her work with tape brought her to a new level of listening and formulating sounds. Now, this isn't the first time that I've pointed out that a woman composer has done something before male composers who ended up getting all the credit. And I know that it doesn't always boil down to sexism. Sometimes the first iteration of a new idea or concept just isn't as well developed as later versions, and those are the ones that get remembered. But I do think that it's pretty disappointing that, at least in my experience, Oliveros is never mentioned along with Steve Reich and Terry Riley, who are considered the daddies of experimental tape music. And the first pieces they wrote came out 4 and 6 years after hers did. Although Time Perspectives was one of her first pieces, it's already very Oliveros-y. It's made of super slow-moving, layered improvisations, and there are these beautiful long stretches of silence. It's the kind of piece that just makes you want to take a deep breath and enjoy the feeling of time passing. In 1961, Oliveros and her friend Ramon Sender started a concert series at a new performance space called the Sonics. This is Oliveros recounting the rush to get the whole thing off the ground in a letter to her mom.
Ramon started building an electronic laboratory just 8 weeks ago and scheduled the opening for December 18th with tape pieces by him, me, Terry Riley, and Phil Windsor. About 10 days before the 18th, there was enough equipment assembled to start work on the pieces. Ramon confiscated a practice keyboard and wired it so there was a switch for each speaker, which enabled us to throw the sound all around the auditorium and even out in the hall. We closed the concert with a live improvisation, which was very successful.
This electronic music laboratory became the San Francisco Tape Music Center a year later. It was a non-profit electronic studio and performance space, co-ran by Oliveros, Sender, Morton Subotnick, and a few others. It's now considered a legendary space in the development of electronic music, and some of the most influential composers of the 20th century composed and performed works there, like Steve Reich, James Tenney, and Luc Ferrari. Oliveros herself composed her first piece of electronic music at the center, called Bye Bye Butterfly. She was determined to learn the technology that was available at the center and worked through the night so that she could work by herself. It was also during this time that she developed her expanded instrument system. It processes sounds from an improviser using a series of delays whose parameters can be controlled.
So I just want to pause this. Oops. Let me put my video back here. And share a different video. So Guy Klusevsek, who is going to be I was talking about him at the beginning of the stream, who's going to be the guest next week. He composed a piece called Pauline, and he did it at a place called Roulette in Brooklyn, and it was site-specific. So he had accordionists all around the sitting audience, above, I think, and there's video of it. It won't get the idea, I think, of that we're learning about Pauline's work is it's very site-specific. It's very much about being immersed and hearing things in different places, or that's some of the ideas of her work. So we won't really get the full vibe, but we can at least see it here. Let's see. I will go here. Okay. All right, back to this other video about Pauline's contributions.
In real time, also by the improviser. Throughout the rest of the 60s, she composed a ton of electronic music. From what I can tell, she composed 39 different pieces in 5 years.
I agree.
But to be honest, this isn't my favorite era of her work. The pieces are 20 or 30 minutes long, and they're quite harsh.
It's inspiring. I would love to do something like that. It definitely gives me ideas. I also remember like the year that I was living in New Orleans, hearing about Aurora Nealand and Charlie, I forget his last name, great trombone player. And like, oh yeah, like New Orleans has, oh, let me put my video back on. Anyway, these two amazing musicians, saxophone player and a trombone player, and they just go hang out over under an overpass, right? Like where it's like the cement, arch, and they just play these long tones for like an hour or something and just change when they feel like it and just like, listen to the resonances. That's a big thing for wind instrument players, especially brass players, is to play long tones. But for them to do it outside in the environment that they're living in the city, and, in this beautiful, Pauline Oliveros, like this, improvisational kind of way. It's really inspiring also. In Bethlehem, where I live, there's a lot of bridges and a lot of overpasses. It'd be really fun to hang out under one.
But she clearly had well-defined aesthetic goals, and I think she realized them effectively. So I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't bother listening to them or that I think they're bad, just that these pieces don't rev my particular personal engine. In 1970, she wrote an article for the New York Times called "And Don't Call Them Lady Composers." And obviously I know that a lot has changed for women since the 70s, points in there that are very much still relevant. She writes,
Rightly, this expression is anathema to many self-respecting women composers. It effectively separates women's efforts from the mainstream.
I totally agree. I know that I have a series on this channel called Women in Electronic Music. So this is probably a good opportunity for me to explain myself and why I agree with her. Obviously, there are a ton of brilliant women composers who have, in a lot of cases, made pretty massive impacts on the world of electronic music. And obviously the fact that they are women is why they've been left out of these historical narratives. It's like the point about experimental tape music that I made earlier. Instead of Reich and Riley, it should be Reich, Riley, and Oliveros. But I do think that it's easy to get too focused on identity, especially because nowadays it's like the go-to method for corporations and people to act like they care without having to actually do anything about it. Like, it's a lot easier to say, "I love women composers," than it is to actually make space for us in music communities. And although women composers are getting a lot more attention now, which is a good thing, I think what happens is that women composer becomes its own category of musician. And as Oliveros says, putting all the emphasis on our identities rather than taking our contributions and ideas and our music seriously does a lot more to sequester us than it does to actually include us in music communities and historical narratives. And Oliveros herself has been pigeonholed like this over and over again by major music publications. Howard Brick wrote,
Pauline Oliveros is one of the few well-known women working in new music.
Kyle Gann wrote,
if Cage could be said to have a female counterpart, it would have to be Pauline Oliveros.
In two of the most popular books on the history of 20th century music, Alex Ross's The Rest is Noise and Paul Griffith's Modern Music Before and After, she was just one on a list of women composers, while the ideas and music of her male contemporaries were discussed in detail. So for my part, I think that we do need to make an extra effort to talk about the contributions of these women composers who have been discounted and ignored on account of their identities. And I do think it's important to point out the ways that they've had to be extra graceful, persistent, and determined to make the contributions that they have. But I think what we have to avoid doing is acting like it's the identities of these people that makes them notable, because there would really be no reason to talk about Pauline Oliveros or any of these other women if they weren't brilliant composers in their own right. Anyway, Oliveros herself goes further than just rightfully demanding recognition for herself and other women composers. At the end of the article, she writes about her philosophy for including everyone in the experience of listening.
Critics do a great deal of damage by wishing to discover greatness. It does not matter that all composers are great composers. It matters that this activity be encouraged among all the population, that we communicate with each other in non-destructive ways.
In 1970, when the article was written, she had already begun to take a long break from composing and performing. She said that she found the political turmoil of the late 60s to be so overwhelming that she turned inward. She would play drones on her accordion and sing along with them to help herself relax. Although she was not actively developing her practice, this time spent just listening was a major first step in the development of deep listening. In 1971, she took another step. She wrote a piece specifically for non-musicians called Sonic Meditations. It's a Yoko Ono-esque instructions piece where each meditation is a prompt to do something that engages focused listening. Number 5 is Take a Walk at Night. Walk so silently that your feet become ears. Then in 1972, she started the Meditations Project, where a group of 20 people would get together 5 days a week to do pieces from the Sonic Meditations. But it wasn't until 1988 that she came up with the term deep listening. She was doing a concert at the Fort Worden Cistern, which is an underground water tank that had a 45-second reverb time.
I came up with the name Deep Listening, and then we laughed a lot and rolled on the floor because we'd been 14 feet underground.
But what exactly is deep listening? Is it just really focused listening to everyday sounds? Or is it more like that party in Eyes Wide Shut? I would say that it's like a life philosophy and meditation practice that says that focused listening should be the central part of your everyday experience. It includes everyday sounds, but also your own thoughts, or even the physical sensation of listening. It's pretty crazy how often you can actually feel sounds in your body. Like when I was researching this video, I was sitting with my legs up on a coffee table and a big truck drove by, and I was surprised at just how much the sound vibrated my legs on the coffee table. It reminded me that listening isn't always just a cerebral or emotional experience, and that the physical sensation of sounds can be really powerful. You know, I haven't been clubbing in a while, but you know when you're just like, you're grooving and you're just feeling the bass and you're just like, I really respect how Oliveros' political beliefs are so clearly reflected in her work. Like, you don't need to be a trained musician or theorist to follow a guided meditation on focused listening. And teaching deep listening became the focus of her entire career from the mid-80s until she passed away. And I think this inclusiveness really separates Oliveros from other composers who were dealing with similar themes around the same time. Like, John Cage wrote this silent piece called 433 that's all about compelling the listener to appreciate everyday sounds. But still, so many people don't get 433 at all. And it's become this classic talking point for people who are like, look at how ridiculous music has become. People don't listen to real music anymore. Like Journey or Bon Jovi, the real good music. I'm not trying to say that because 433 is easily misunderstood, that it's bad, or that accessibility should be the only thing that we judge a piece of music on. But I do think it's really interesting to compare the differences in approach. Like, John Cage was like, I'm gonna do my thing, and if you don't get it, go shit. Which, like, fair enough. But Oliveros, on the other hand, used deep listening to expand the kinds of social relationships that we can form around listening and music. Instead of centering her practice around lofty concepts or advanced musical techniques, she just spent her energy trying to get as many people as possible to listen. In addition to teaching deep listening, Oliveros started a deep listening band that did improvised performances and recordings. And in 2005, she started the Deep Listening Institute that continues to give workshops, publications, deep listening retreats, and trains new teachers to continue spreading the good deep listening gospel. In the later years of her life, she was asked by an interview what she thought was her greatest accomplishment.
Well, I'm not terrifically interested in leaving so-called masterpieces, but I think that more important is the work that I've done to facilitate creativity in others as well as in myself. What I think about legacy is leaving behind ways of listening and ways of responding.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this episode of Sounds Good. I had a lot of fun.
Cool. I like Sounds Good. I'm going to subscribe to Sounds Good. What else does Sounds Good have? Slow down 1000%, money versus art. Sophie. Cool. These are cool. I like it. Okay. I know what I want to watch next. But also, is this getting anybody else inspired? Feeling creative about these sounds, this concept of listening. And are you all familiar with John Cage, 4 minutes, 33 seconds? Remember that was like taking music classes in college. It was, you know, a really important thing to conceive. To think about. Okay, where's the Kristen Linklater thing that I wanted to find? Where is that? Had it. Here we go. Let's check this out. I think my
thank you.
I should have done more research to get some more live stream friendly segments for my physics of music. That it's so boring, and I didn't really pre-watch it very well to find the good spots. So we'll come back to that more. But let's check out, this is the USC, that's University of Southern California, School of Dramatic Arts has an interview with Kristen Linklater. We can scrub through this. They have nice little chapters in here.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Let me ask.
Oh, let me go to the chat. Tom says, yeah, very cool. And Bertie Wooster says, yeah, it makes me want to mess around with my accordion, play some really dissonant droning music. Yeah, me too. Maybe dissonant and maybe some consonant too. And the site-specific stuff is always cool.
Ask you to tell us about when you first met.
Oh, God. Well, I was counting it out. It was about 40 years ago.
Yeah.
74, it was working theatre.
Working theatre.
Where
Working
was
theatre. It was Kristen, Peter Cass, and Joe Chaikin.
New York, 1974.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I went as a student actor.
Now, if we even go, for you, Kristen, if we go back a little further than that, into the 60s, I remember reading that there was a movement in the States called the Human Growth Movement that was in some way part of your
No,
journey?
it was the zeitgeist.
Tell me...
it was the zeitgeist.
Okay,
You've
'cause I'd
heard
never
about
heard of that
and
movement.
You're kidding.
No, I didn't.
I mean, it was, well...
Human growth movement? It seems...
Well, that was the sort of general thing. It's like saying a new age.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It was like saying the new age. I mean, the human growth movement was maybe a term used by some people
I see.
to trace the development, the huge amount of self-examination that was going on in the psychophysical field, stemming from Esalen on the West Coast with, who was the love guy? No, who were all, anyway, names we can, if my brain would come up with them, well-known names who were kind of at the beginning, through bioenergetics, Wilhelm Reich, that kind of what's in the body, what's being, and Stanley Kellerman, it was amazing, and Joseph Campbell, those kinds of people who were searching.
Yeah.
They were searching for a deeper existence in life, and that wasn't just Freud. It was very Jungian based, I would say, and very Wilhelm Reich, very bioenergetics based. But there were intensive weekends, and the group therapy. I was talking about how wonderful all the group therapy was. Everybody was doing group, and rebirthing
And
and
Lamaze,
confrontation and
everybody,
everything.
all the time.
And it was wonderful. I mean, I look back on it as being a wonderful time of everybody wanting just to get at the meaning of life from and transform themselves from the inside out.
This is fascinating, but I just want to move forward. Just to focus in on kind of stuff that connects to our theme today.
So
does that?
This is beautiful, and does that? I want to ask if that implies that in some way the training of the human voice is an attempt to open up a desocialized connection.
No, I would say a very sophisticated re-socialization.
Okay.
Because now you're a grown-up.
Yeah.
It's not that you were being encouraged to return to the unmediated impulse following of the child.
Of the toddler,
But that you can find those impulses, and now the exciting thing is you have the choice.
Yeah.
You have choices among impulses, and you get this game, this wonderful game of life, which, how does this impulse actually impact upon this person? And is this going to be fruitful or not? And the negotiation then becomes very sophisticated and I think fun.
Yeah, I think that...
Does that make... how do you feel about that description?
What I say to the students is really that anarchy is not freedom. You know, freedom is choice, really, when you're doing that. And that's why I don't like to work with younger people. They have to, for me, they have to be at a certain age where there's a consciousness that allows them to enter into that, to tap that kind of emotional resource or expression rather than just sort of splatting out and acting out in a way.
Yeah, and I was once offered a very useful little thing, which is to say, you were working towards freedom from your inhibitions, but then it's freedom for what? And you really need to take care of that.
Okay.
There's a responsibility.
Okay. And in our case, when we're talking about the theatre and storytelling, what might be an answer to that? Freedom for what? Is it for
freedom
in the service of story?
Well, this is so wonderful, the service of this particular art with a capital A.
Okay.
Yeah. And that I can only really, I think, teach with the excuse of theatre.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I can't honestly say that I know enough about life.
Oh, yeah. No.
To say this is really good
I
for
think
your
that-
life.
I think that
but
binds the three of us.
I know
Yeah,
that
yeah, that's
I can
right.
say this is really good in terms of theatre. In fact, it's essential in terms of theatre
Yeah.
that you can go to the nth degree, that
Yeah.
you can.
But you're much more willing to work with, like I really love to work with actors, but you were willing to work with people.
I work with such interesting people
Yeah,
now.
so-
This
so
is one
there
of
you
the
go.
great benefits
Exactly.
of my current situation is I do work with people who are not actors, and they're very interesting, brave people.
Yeah. So I wonder if we're right on the verge of a question that I wanted to ask, which is to do with the role of the imagination in our work, and how I think you described in the paper that I referred to earlier that you wrote recently, you described the imagination, or one of the functions of your work is to try and connect a pathway between the imagination and the potential of the voice. And actually I've been thinking about this a lot lately in terms of working with students and actors. How is it possible to encourage a young person to engage with their imagination in a way that is in service of our art form? And what are the obstacles?
It's a huge question. Can you narrow it down a little?
Well, I guess, I mean, let's be specific.
Let's be
I know
specific.
that there are certain students that I might be working with tomorrow or yesterday, or very recently, or under current circumstances, who seem to have a blockage between what they are doing in terms of following instructions or, pursuing the curriculum, whatever that might mean, and a free imagination. They don't seem connected to their imagination. What do we do?
Well, I don't see it as a stark problem in the way that you do, you've just described, although I think you're probably also talking about the thing which is in the room, which is that the influence of electronic digital communication on the human instrument, and that's something which I think is another subject, and we can talk about that, and I'd be happy to give my opinions on that. But that's what poetry is for. That in terms of training the imagination, maybe I should tell the story about the girl at Emerson when I was working on haiku.
All right, fascinating, but I want to get practical here.
We are covering resonance again. Now, a way that I like to think about resonance is that it's how our sound cuts through space. And that starts in our vocal tract, which is the tube from our glottis, that's the fancy word for the level of the vocal cords or folds, up through the oral cavity and up through the nasal cavity. So in this sort of two-pronged tube. However, the sound is bouncing around off the walls inside the vocal tract affects how the sound is going to continue out into space and bounce off the walls in the space that you're in. So, as we know, we live in 3 dimensions, and in the last 2 rounds of the resonance exercises, we've talked about mask resonance and loft resonance. Now, mask resonance I talked about is when we get into this masquerade ball mask area, and it's a really bright, pingy sound that we can use for rock singing or belting, right? And then we came to the top of the head and we talked about getting a lofty sound, which is an up and down sound, right? So the lofty sound, the loft resonance, cuts through space on the vertical axis. The mask resonance cuts through space on the horizontal axis. And now, today, we're going to get into oral resonance, which I like to think of as cutting through space on the front to back sagittal axis or plane, okay? So we're going to start by doing the same sort of tapping that we've done before. You're going to come to the back of your head, right to the bumpy occipital ridge. So you don't want to be below it, you want to be right above it where you can really feel bone. If you look at me, it's right about there, okay? So first start by just tapping this part of your body in order to wake up your awareness of the back of your skull, okay? Now we're going to mix that with something, and I like to call this doing the mouthwash exercise, because it's like you're swirling mouthwash around in your mouth, trying to find the excitement and pinginess of the oral cavity, okay? So on an M sound, imagine that you're swishing mouthwash around in your mouth and really feel it buzzing your lips, buzzing your hard palate all the way through your oral cavity. And don't push with this, just see how easily you can allow air to flow through and find this buzz. Okay, good. Now combine the two. Tapping the back, thinking front to back, that sagittal plane. So we're not falling back energetically, but we're tapping the back of our skull and also doing the mouthwash exercise at the same time. Ready? Good, okay. So what that's helping us do is find ease with this resonance that's going to bring a depth and rich quality to our voice. And then we want to think about sending it out straight through space out there. So we're going to use the sound ooh, and I like the sound ooh because it brings the back of the tongue high and it brings the lips forward into some rounding. So we're going to use that sound. We're going to move from the M to the ooh. We're going to moo like cows, basically. So we're going to go moo. And you can play around with the pitch that you're on too. Moo. And then go ahead and
this is my experience with, I had one class with Connie Copy down in Philadelphia, who's awesome and very interesting woman. And she just ran me through the vowel sounds, and it's really interesting. It's like so invigorating to the body, and to do this Linklater work, it makes me feel silly, and I would imagine if you're doing this, you feel that too. But it's also invigorating and wakes us up.
and try it without your hands up. Moo. You can look around the wall in front of you and spray the wall with your moo sound. Moo. Moo. Okay, good. And now let's go ahead and test out how this feels. Doing a diagnostic, just like we did in the last resonance exercise. We're going to count out loud up to 10. Here we go.
Now again, why do I think this is cool for accordionists? Because we're thanks for you, Worcester. Yeah, because what do we do? What is the every tone? Just like on a human voice, you know, we start with our vowel sounds or vowel. I mean, everything is made upon a vowel sound, which is the vibrating of the vocal cords. You know, without that, you don't really have any sort of music. You don't have tone the same way. So you have is an example of an unvoiced sound, right? Now, if you add the voiced sound, this is just to that, you get zzz, zzz. But without that, you just have sh, sh, zzz. So it's the combination of the vocal cords. But that's, and with the accordion, same thing. You know, we have the vibration of the reeds, which generates. It's the same thing as a vowel sound, as far as I'm concerned. And then from that, we can have different articulations on top of it, which would be the way the lips and tongue shape the sound. And then also the vowel sounds relate to how deeply or lightly we're playing on the buttons and the keys here. And the more we can like invigorate ourselves and think sound-wise, you know, think orally, turn on our listening to be more in terms of our accordion, and then think that that's the properties, you know, that we point our ears to naming and looking at those properties of the sound. That gives us different ways of conceiving sound, you know, hearing sounds that we hear, and then conceiving of how to get them out of the accordion, rather than, I think, the beginning place, which is the accordion is a mechanical on-off device. You know, I'm either moving the bellows or I'm not moving the bellows. I'm either pressing the key down or I'm not pressing the key down, and that's it. that is very limiting. You know, there's only so many places you can go from there. And by putting these different paradigms on it, by listening to resonance, by feeling the vibrations, that sort of stuff, I think is a very enlightening thing, you know. Even though these are, well, this, I think this channel is for singers. And Kristen Linklater, I think, let's see, vocal health educator. Yeah. The voice body connections. Very interesting. Very interesting. And that's a big thing that in the Linklater exercises, it's about where in the body are we feeling these different vowel resonances coming from. And that's just the vowels. She has tons of stuff. This looks like fun. Let's see this one. Let's watch this one. This looks fun. Yeah, the pedagogy of movements. I have no idea what that's supposed to be about, but it's really interesting. That reminds me of this Edwin Gordon thing. Edwin Gordon exercise. See, I'll find it real quick, I'm sure. Not the due day. Of course, now I'm looking for it and I can't find it. Well, I won't waste all the time on that. I thought it would come up. It's this educator going da doo da. It's very it's music education for very little kids, but it's teaching these properties of movement with sound. And it reminds me of Jacques and how Jacques talks about, you know, tensions and releases, you know. And a latest idea that I've had is about expansions and contractions, which I'm sure Jacques would say, of course, and have lots of great things to say to that. So I don't want to claim that I'm moving his pedagogy forward, but just making connections, you know. Great teachers plant seeds in you and give you things to move forward to. So like the idea that a different way of looking at things, a different paradigm could not just be tensions and resolutions, but expanding and contracting movements and ideas too. And I thought that was da doo-da. It goes like that. It's very fun. And it's like this kind of system. Anyways, all right, we are at 3 o'clock. This has been really fun. Thanks everybody for watching. I am kind of on the fence about the Thursday streams. I don't really know. I need to like reflect and listen to everything around me. And figure out if I'm going to still, I don't want to promise that I'm going to do the Thursday live stream. I don't know, but if I do it, I will send out an email and put stuff on social media to let you know. I'm also trying to figure out how to start live streaming on, what do you call it? Multi-streaming on Instagram as well to meet more people. And I'm still kind of curious about putting the stream on TikTok as well, which doesn't mean that any of you need to get a TikTok account, nor will your information be shared on TikTok. It just means that this stream will go to a TikTok channel. And I'm interested in that because I think there's a lot more, a whole different demographic of people on TikTok to reach that I think is pretty cool. Thanks. Usually this stuff is almost like more my Thursday night stuff where I'm a little bit more, it's a little bit more, I don't know, kind of nerdy or whatever. And then the Tuesday stream, I try to keep more, I don't know, straightforward. It's like, let's look at music and musicians. Anyway, the streams are fun. They're always evolving, and it allows me time to learn and explore things that I'm interested in that I think you might be interested in as well. If you go to community.risingread.com, right here, you can find the archive of all the past live streams in case you want to watch them. This one will be up pretty soon, and you can also watch it on Twitch. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Bertie Wooster and everybody else in the chat. I'll see you at the very latest next Tuesday.